Hey everyone, welcome to the Bridgepoint Podcast. We are so glad that you're here. I'm Matthew Peters and
I am your boy,
Eli.
Yes.
And we are here talking to you about a very important subject that is plaguing Christianity, and it is nothing new. It is actually something very ancient. It's something that Jesus was absolutely passionate about. We're going to be talking about the subject of
Hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy. Eli, how do you feel about how do you feel about hypocrisy? And tell me why.
Don't like it.
Yeah, you feel stronger than that. You feel stronger than that. I know you do.
Yeah, just flat. I just don't like it. I mean, for every person, hypocrisy I think hits different. I think it's totally just dependent on what kind of like situations that person's been through in their life, and how they handle hypocrisy. I mean, flatline is just betrayal. I mean, it could be something as easy as your boss telling you not to wear white shirts, and then he comes in the next day with a white shirt on.
With a white shirt.
You know,
I cannot tell you that I've actually had something similar to that to happen to me.
It's so stupid.
And you're like, what? So just baseline.
Right.
Hypocrisy is something that drives any human being batty.
Yeah, for sure.
There's just something deep within our makeup that when someone says, act like this, or when they say you should act like this and they don't.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. One of the things that impacted me tremendously and has been a bit of a repeat has been the command for ethical purity on the part of Christian leaders, and and almost to the T, the ones that are the most vehement about it are the ones that you find out years later are absolutely involved in it, deep, and have spent tons of money and time to be able to cover that up. And it all comes out in the wash. And what's really disturbing is when you know these people personally, they have impacted your life. Perhaps they've met with you, mentored you. Maybe you've read their books, been to their conferences.
Yep.
You know, I'm not wanting to drop names or anything, but I mean, I had the pleasure of meeting Ravi Zacharias and talking to him on multiple occasions. And I thought the world of this guy. And then all of a sudden you find out there's a whole second guy in there.
Unfortunately, I mean, I feel like that is the entire reason why people don't want to go to church anymore.
Yeah, because it's like flags up. What is the point of these people? Because they don't have any integrity. They're just a bunch of hypocrites, right?
Yeah. And I mean, you know, for me in, you know, my previous life, that was something that really kept me away from wanting to go to churches, because I think inside I had a longing for, I wanted something to believe in, you know, and I couldn't find that in humanity. And I think I kept searching for that in humanity. And I think when humanity takes Christ out of church, you know, it turns into this thing that everybody looks at. It's not the church that we know, but to the world, this is the church that they know.
Yeah, they just know hypocrisy.
And it's like, it's a shame. Yeah,
one of the things that was impressed upon me, my wife and I years ago had a lot of marital problems, and I'm talking 15 plus years ago, and I will own the lion's share of that. In fact, I think I'm, unfortunately, looking back, I had a lot of the issues, but we went to an outstanding Christian therapist, counselor, out of Colorado Springs. He did intensive counseling. We flew out there. People supported us from our church to go. It was a really, it was a hard on me type thing, being a pastor and realizing that I needed that kind of care. But he had us go through a series of like a moral inventory, if you will. And, you know, anyone who's been through recovery.
Celebrate recovery.
Right, celebrate recovery.
It sucks.
Yeah, it's horrible to do that.
It doesn't suck like it's not a fun thing to do. I mean, like
it's hard to do.
It's hard to do. Yeah.
And he had things like being in love with the world. He called it temporal values. Like, in other words, if you're in love with your car more than your wife, like you're some kind of Ferris Bueller, like you don't understand. He loves the car. He hates his wife. Like, you will never have a good marriage. right? And if
Oh,
you love
agreed.
the world, as John, the epistles of John tell us, anyone who's in love with the world can't love God. So he had all these categories. You know, he had temporal values. He had abuse issues you got to clean up. He had issues of immorality that you got to clean up. And one of the things that actually surprised me, I mean, he had a chapter on pride. One of the things that surprised me was hypocrisy. It was this huge thing. At the time, I didn't really think it. And what he described is that there is a public hypocrisy and there's a hidden hypocrisy.
Yep.
And the public hypocrisy is like the boss who tells you not to wear clothes and then wears them himself and flaunts it, right? But a hidden hypocrisy and a hidden pride, if you will, is to be able to think that you're just fine, but in fact, you're a total pride-filled, hypocritical serpent, as Jesus would describe.
Yeah, you doofus.
Yeah, it's not something that's wholesome or healthy, and you can't really ever grow spiritually, nor can you ever lead anyone to grow spiritually if you're involved in hypocrisy.
You know, I mean, you know, I'm always the first person to take the blame for stuff, just because, I mean, you know, when you look at that's one of the things that moral inventory taught me was, you know, you look deep in.
Right.
And I mean, anything that happens in your life, ultimately, it does somehow lead back to you in some way, shape, or form. And I think, you know, being human, everybody's been hypocritical. You know, I used to drum for a church, and I went through a season of my life where it was difficult to worship because I felt like my relationship with God was kind of stagnant or stale. And I felt like he wasn't talking to me and he wasn't answering any questions that I had. I mean, not that I deserve answers at that time, you know, but, you know, I pulled out of the worship band because I felt like I can't play in a worship band and play worship music if I'm not worshiping, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things.
And I felt like I was a liar, you know?
Well, one of the things about you, and I think I share this, and I'm not trying to say you're all good and I'm all good, okay? But like I might have a proclivity to lust, okay? And I would fall into that, right? But there are certain things that
you're a male,
right?
I mean,
and there are certain things that, like I you know, in my past life, I indulged in certain forms of addiction. But you're never going to find me on opiates. I can't stand this stuff. I got dear friends that have died of opiate addiction. That just ain't me. Here's another one that's not me: gambling, not me; lying, not me. Right? Hypocrisy is one where I feel like I'm a little bit in the middle.
I'm a car salesman, so I kind of have to lie a little bit.
Oh, really? Well,
I'm playing.
They say shade the truth.
Yeah.
This is, by the way, this is why people don't like car salesmen.
Yep, that's exactly true.
But back to the hypocrisy thing, I don't know why, but hypocrisy to me is kind of like cheating. I can cheat. I have cheated, I'm ashamed to say, but I made my skin crawl. So there are certain sins that I will have a proclivity to. There are certain sins that I just never will do, just ain't me, right? And there are ones that, like, I can do, but it makes my skin crawl. And when I cheat, or when I cheat and lie to myself, or when I'm a hypocrite, I really don't like it. And this has been a major, major issue on me when it comes to teaching and preaching God's word. Right. Bro, if I am not right on with God, I have no business stepping up on the platform and preaching the gospel.
So then here's a question for you. Because, you know, if I'm looking at it outside looking in, because I have that ability to do so.
Sure.
You know, I can go back into my brain when I was an unbeliever, and I can think that way. It's weird. I don't know how to explain it better than that. But you as a pastor, being the main pastor of a church, if you did not feel it, would you still preach?
You mean didn't feel
like if you were in a season like I was?
Yeah, no, I'd have to step down. I'd have to be like, no.
And a lot of people don't understand that. Like they feel like every pastor or preacher is going to do it regardless.
Well, I mean, I think what ends up happening is you know, is that what you take the first step towards hypocrisy, and what it does is it bifurcates your soul.
Right.
You create two separate people. We become a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, a night and dark person.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? A light and dark person. And you become that chasm, and that world grows and grows. The moment you give it an inch, it will begin to take a mile. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about ignorance in terms of your hypocrisy. So, for example, there are people, and I'm sure all of us fall into this category, where we do not realize levels of hypocrisy. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when I know full well, right, that I'm not good. So, for example, there have been times where I will literally walk over to my children or my wife or someone in church, or sometimes I will ask for prayer before I go, because I got to get that cleaned up, because the me that is God is using to proclaim the truth of the love of God in Jesus, there cannot be any bifurcated soul there. You can't be wearing a mask, you know?
Right.
One of the things that the ancient Greeks had, they had plays. And I have traveled to the Middle East and been to places in like Greece and in Jerusalem and in Jordan, and they used to have these giant amphitheaters. And one of the coolest things is that they have these giant amphitheaters that can seat like 15,000 people. And when I was in this place called Dion, which is where the Oracle of Delphi is near, most people know about that. And this woman did this demonstration, and we were seated way up in the cheap seats, you know, way up there. And she walked, and as she walked to the center of the platform, she clapped, and it was like, it got louder and louder and louder, because when you got to the epicenter of where the sound was, and they did all this. So back in the day, they could have these plays, and in order for them to, they got the sound right? But they didn't have big screen TVs the way we do when you're watching a rock show or a movie, right? So what they did is they wore these giant masks. And a lot of times they wore these masks in front of their faces, and that was how you would know who this character was in the play. And this word in that we have in English is a transliteration of the Greek word hypocrite. Okay? So what a hypocrite is doing is they're play acting. Precisely. And they're wearing a mask so that the mass audience that sees them will think of them as someone that they really aren't. And this is something that Jesus has zero tolerance for. Like, if you're caught in adultery, he'll tell you, go sin no more. If you're caught in hypocrisy, he'll say, woe to you, woe to you, woe to you. Whoa, I shouldn't pound on the table, right? Why? Because
it's okay, be passionate.
Because it's a bifurcated soul. It's a soul, believe it or not, that the devil can use far more effectively for the destruction of the individual and of the people around them. And you and I have experienced that in ourselves, and also we've been the recipients of it, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, like, not only that, but like, you know, prosperity gospel preaching, you know, stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, it that word stings. Like, just
the prosperity gospel.
That, and not only that. I mean, just if you're going even deeper, just
right.
You know, hypocrisy in itself. I mean, I feel like that has put such a negative stigma on the church that it's really hard to have someone to have the want to come to church, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. My brother-in-law recently retired. Lisa's brother. He retired from the Navy. He went to the academy, spent 27 some years, almost 30 years in the Navy. Okay, retires, and he bought his first home. Okay, he's lived all over the world, right? But now he's buying his first home, and he bought a really nice home in north of Chicago, but it has a lot of problems. It needs a lot of repairs. And he says to me, hey, will you pray for this situation? He says, because we are new to the area. We don't know who to trust. We bring in someone to take a look at the house, and they're more than happy to tell us all that's wrong with the house. And I go, let me guess, so they can fix it for a fee? And he goes, exactly. And so he doesn't know who to trust. He doesn't know if these people are hypocrites masquerading as repair people. You know, you hear about these mechanics who tell a little old lady that they repaired her car, and, you know, they do a 60 minutes or Dateline special, whatever, and sure enough, the VIN part number or whatever is same. It wasn't replaced at all. You know, just straight up lying to people about things. And this is so infuriating, is when you're dealing with people that are not accurate. They're not telling you the truth. And back to the prosperity gospel, they think, the world looks at the prosperity gospel and they're like, oh yeah, you're selling me something. I see it. Now, don't tell me that you're telling me about God and spirituality. Jesus was a humble person. Jesus was a person who was not pursuing affluence, right? Jesus was a person that says the foxes have dens, right? But the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. You know, I'm sure that Jesus was well provided for. There were a lot of wealthy people, especially women, that did support the ministry of Jesus, but he wasn't rolling around thick, you know, getting wealthy and telling everyone, yeah, follow me and I'll make you rich. In fact, he teaches the opposite. Yep. So then when people read their Bible and they see the character of Jesus, and then they watch these prosperity people preaching to the tens of thousands a message of you, it's all about you. When Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me, he says, die to yourself, love other people sacrificially. And they see this, they cannot reconcile. And I think one thing about human psychology that is absolutely intolerable is cognitive dissonance. If you think that someone does not make any sense, you will have to resolve that. You cannot live with that tension. And so I think you're spot on that, you know, we wouldn't think of hypocrisy immediately, perhaps, when we talk about what's epidemic in the, pun intended, prosperity gospel today. But I think hypocrisy is right in the wheelhouse. Yeah. You're making a great observation. Wow.
And I mean, it really sucks, because when I talk to anybody, you know, any of my friends or, you know, family that may not be a believer, I'm not one to say that they are or aren't, you know.
Sure.
Like, the first thing that always comes to the conversation is like, you know, I just don't have the want to go to a church with 10,000 people. You know, I don't want to go to a church where the pastor's driving a Lambo.
Right.
I don't want to go to a church where, you know, they tell you adultery is bad, and then they're flirting with the 14-year-old girls at the youth group.
Right.
You know, it's such a, to me, it's such a disgusting thing. And it internally and probably outwardly, if you see it infuriates me. And it's like, I can never wake up and just have the want to do those things, you know? And I feel like God has chiseled my heart into a certain shape that he wants it to be in.
Yeah.
Which has pulled me away from those things. Like, I mean, sin is there in everybody's life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, could I go to a casino right now and gamble? Yeah. Could I lose all my money, all $23 that I have? Yeah, I could.
In 5 seconds.
Or, yeah, absolutely. Or I can make 5,000. I'm not going to take that chance.
Right.
Because I know that once that seed's planted, like you were talking about, you create that little chasm in it.
Right.
I know where that seed goes. I know what it grows into. I've seen it.
Yeah, and then the more you live as a hypocrite, the more you have to reinforce that, and the more you have to push that, and the more you have to develop that, and you become this systemic liar.
Yep.
You know, one of the things that I went through a seminar called I Disciple, and basically all they did is they told us to read the scripture passage, right, and then ask what is God teaching you, and
That's so stupid.
No, it's straightforward. Come on, dude. So they said, when Jesus, this was one of the passages, Matthew chapter 23. Then Jesus said to the crowds and his disciples, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So practice and observe whatever they tell you, but not what they do. For they preach, but they do not practice. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, They lay them on people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move them with their finger. They do all their deeds to be seen by others. This goes to your health and wealth prosperity gospel.
Yeah.
It's like everything they're doing is to be seen, right? For they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long, and they love the place of honor at the feasts and the best seats in the synagogue and in the greetings in the marketplace and being called rabbi by others. You know what I mean? Like pastor.
Yeah.
Like one of the things, like I'll go by pastor, but like people don't have to call me pastor. I just call me by my first name, man. Just a guy, you know? And he says, and then Jesus goes on, he says, then he starts saying, the greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. For you neither enter yourselves nor allow those who would enter or go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you travel across. This is the one that blew me away. You travel. I lost my place. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you travel across sea and land to make a single proselyte, and when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourself.
Yep.
And what ends up happening is there are these people, and I just believe that hypocrisy is the thing that Jesus couldn't stand more than anything else because it breeds itself.
Mm-hmm.
It breeds itself.
It
and
does.
he has the harshest words in all of the Bible. You know, people say, oh, don't be a Pharisee. And they typically want to talk about legalism, right? Okay, fine. But if you look at this passage, when Jesus really drops the hammer, you know, it starts calling people snakes and vipers and stuff like that, and fools and stuff, like it's when he's addressing the issue of hypocrisy and the hypocrisy of, like we were saying, I'm going to say one thing, but the systemic pattern of my life has nothing to do with what God is all about and what love is all about and what giving is all about. It's all about me, you know? And that is just, I remember being so frustrated because people, and look, I'm like, we talked about this the last time. I'm a Bible guy, okay? And I believe that you've got to listen to what God says. You got to obey him. Call that doctrine, right? And people are like, I hate doctrine. Talk to the Navy SEALs. They have doctrine. That's why they win their battles.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction.
Doctrine,
Exactly.
right? So we're not like capital D doctrine, beating people up with it, but we want to hear the truth, know the truth, and act in it, right? So one of the things that is really sad is that people who are hypocritical, they don't have good doctrine. They don't follow things right. And they're teaching people things and they're behaving in particular ways that are absolutely toxic to being able to become the person that God would require you to be.
Precisely.
And they're going to say things over here that sound really nice, but then watch how they behave. Even just, it's so hard. Not even one particular example, but just the whole shape of their lives. And it's not something that we as Christians want to become. And it's not something, it's like he said, you can't bring anyone to a saving knowledge if you yourself are such a hypocrite. And this is one of the things I think is, again, a major problem with cultural Christianity in America and perhaps even the whole world. It's hypocrisy, in my mind, it is at an epidemic level.
And I can give you 1,000 different situations that I've experienced my own self that would like probably make you want to throw up at the things I've seen churches do.
Okay.
But, you know, I mean, it just that infuriates me a lot. And it's like,
but doesn't it drive you like
yeah,
you know,
it does.
when I was 18, my pastor was a pastor of a very large church, and you know, this was unheard of. When I grew up as a kid, our churches were really small. And then we went to this big giant church, and this guy was making this church grow by leaps and bounds. And he was really just a charlatan. I mean, he really was. Okay, he was
I don't know what a charlatan is.
A person who is scamming people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he was having extramarital affairs. His family was not in order. He was not telling the truth on a number of fronts. He was very wrapped up in himself, but he was caught because the woman that he was with basically blew the whistle. Okay. And what ended up happening is he tried to dissolve the elder board, or at least get rid of the people on the elder board who he felt might discipline him. And my father was one of them. And his wife called my house. Now, my father traveled a lot. He was an international businessman growing up. And my dad was gone all over the world, at least one, or the country, at least 1 week out of the month. Okay. And I don't remember where my dad was. I don't know if he was in Germany or Belgium or California or Japan. Okay. But he was not at home. And the telephone rang, and I picked up the phone, and it was the pastor's wife, and she asked to speak to my father. And I said, that my parents trained me. I said, my dad's not home. I'd be happy to take a message. He's on a business trip, and he'll call you back when he gets home. Well, she lit me up. She told my dad was in league with Satan. She screamed at me, right? And then later, he and his wife were asked not to come to the congregational meeting where they were going to decide what to do to the pastor, and he interrupted the meeting with her, and they held hands, and they walked down the center aisle, and they stepped up in front of the whole congregation and said, "It's not true. None of these adultery claims are true." And then I was going to get kicked out of the youth group and barred from going on the mission trip that summer because he had told me a year previously in his living room, because I had found out through his daughter these things were true. And I said, no, he's not telling the truth. And the whole leadership of the church turned against me and against my family. Okay. Now, the silver lining is that was resolved. My dad was restored. I was restored. Praise God, the leadership of the church, many of them came back and personally apologized to me, that snotty-nosed kid they thought was an arrogant you-know-what, right? And I was just right. I mean, I didn't think I handled myself in a crude way. I just was very confused. That's the way I remember it. But what I'm trying to lead in is that there's a part of me that doesn't want anything to do with that. I don't ever want anyone to ever feel the way I felt. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. I want to follow Jesus, and I want him to reveal to me if there's any untrue, bifurcated, hypocriticalness in me, that he would clean that up and make me pure and straightforward. That's why when people say, "Oh, you're manipulating me," I'm like, "What are you talking about, man? I'm just straightforward. You don't like it, that's one thing, but there's no manipulation here. This is just straight up." Right?
One of my favorite things to say is, just because it hurts your feelings doesn't take away that it's true.
Right. No, I understand. We want to say everything in love, right? But I cannot. There was a wonderful woman in our church, and I don't know if she would want me to mention this, but her name starts with a K, okay? And she's an incredible business lady. And she says to me, "I cannot control how you feel. And I cannot be responsible for how you feel. I can do my best to treat you with love and respect, but if you still feel a particular way, and I've done my very best, I cannot be held responsible for that." And at first I was sort of like, when she said that, I was sort of like, no, I think you really do need to bear some responsibility for how someone feels. You've got to say the truth in love, not just the truth. Because truth without love ceases to be truth, right? It's just a hammer and hurts people. But at the same time, after a while, you're like, yeah, maybe it's not me, it's you. So that's an interesting sidebar. But back to the hypocritical issue. Isn't that a part of what's driving you to follow Jesus and not be a hypocritical person, because of the damage and the negativity you've seen with hypocrisy that's impacted your life?
Right, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And I feel like I can speak for a lot of people when I say this too. When I see these things,
right?
When I'm in a scenario where this is present, I feel horrible for the people that are following it. It's like, I know what he's doing. I know what this is.
Right.
God has made this apparent to me that I should not be a part of this. And it's like, I feel like saddened, depressed in a way. And it's like, how can me, a Jesus follower, you know, it's depressing because it's like the one thing that comes to my mind is like, you know, I've been to churches where if you weren't wearing a suit and tie or a tuxedo or something, you weren't a Christian. I've been to churches where if you wore
these cultural mores that become somehow connected with your spiritual condition and relationship with God. Right.
You know,
like if you have a tattoo, somehow you're like going to hell, and they quote some obscure verse in Leviticus not to mark up your body or something, right?
I might make a joke by saying Jesus might like my tattoo in the meeting.
Well, he might.
You know,
yeah,
we'll
absolutely.
But I mean, sorry, we'll talk about that later. But you know, it makes me just want to lead by example more in a way, because it's like,
right,
in my heart of hearts, I know this is wrong,
right,
but I don't know what to do to, you know, show others that this is wrong, if that makes sense.
Well, are you talking about when you see hypocrisy in another
Mm-hmm.
person?
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Okay, like Westboro Baptist Church.
Oh, the ones that hold up signs.
Yeah.
At funerals of homosexuals or something.
And it's like, that's super extreme.
Sure.
But you know, to call yourself, I mean, a church and stuff like that, I mean, that has many different meanings. But, you know, to be a congregation that believes all of these things, and it's like, how do you as a person not understand the things that you are doing? You know, how do you not see?
Well, I don't know if the Pharisees saw it. I mean,
No.
Jesus says to them, listen, you guys, you tithe on your mint and your cumin, but you've neglected the weightier issues of the law, which is justice and mercy.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, what?
And
like, how could he's like, you blind guides. You blind guide. I think there's a spiritual blindness and sometimes in these situations that only God can open up the eyes.
I mean, you know, another example that I see a lot in churches is, it's like, I call it positive Christianity.
Okay.
And I can't ever think of a better term for it, because that's the only thing that I can think of. What I mean by that is the churches that only focus on the positive things, and they try to either cut out or ignore the negative things.
Sure.
You know, everything's always good. Things are always this, you know. Oh, yeah, we've got a $4 or $5, $6 million budget. Everything's going to be taken care of. And it's like,
have you ever heard of the Crystal Palace?
No.
Okay. This guy named Robert Schuller, okay? And I believe in the 1970s and 80s, he wrote The Power of Positive Thinking is the next level of reformation. So in other words, if Martin Luther took the Roman Catholic Church and Christianity in a newer and better direction, he was going to take Christianity in a new and better direction with the gospel of positivity, okay? And he built this massive, literally glass church in California, the Crystal Palace. Don't quote me, but I think he's bankrupt now. I think it's done, okay? I don't know enough.
I was going to ask you what happened to it.
I think his son took over, but it's neither here nor there. But what that did is that opened up an avenue where a whole group of people could be sold goods and spiritual services, okay, for positivity. And leaders figured out, this feels good. We can enmesh this. We can do this. And then they don't ever want to talk about repentance. They don't ever want to talk about suffering. They will do acrobatics and backflips to either pursue positivity alone, right? Or excitement and enthusiasm and inspirational messages. And like, this is a huge, huge temptation for pastors, because let me tell you, you preach an inspirational message, everyone's going to be patting on your back. Everyone's going to be inviting a friend.
You know, putting money in the bowl that you're passing.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but what if you came to church that day and Lazarus is in the tomb? Can you cry? Can you be angry the way Jesus was? The Greek word that gets used is that Jesus was like, his whole guts were torn up. He was so upset, right? And the funny thing is, I'm pretty sure Jesus knew in just a few minutes he was going to raise this guy from the dead, right? And he's still angry. Yeah. He's angry at death. He's angry, so he's upset. He doesn't really have a inspirational message quite yet. You know, so it's like there's a huge hypocrisy that goes behind this power of positive thinking, and it's like people have to then, it breeds a hypocrisy, because imagine if you, one of the things that I like to say is you never know what someone just went through. Okay.
No.
So,
Which is something I've been trying to teach myself too.
And we need to be sensitive to that in ourselves and others, right? So someone comes to church and they're actually just super sad because they found out their relative is going to die, or they are in deep pain, right? So like you and I, we have medical issues that we're going through. We're getting help for that, but at any given moment, you don't know how you're feeling or how I'm feeling, you know? And I've had a lot of health issues in the last year, and people,
you especially,
yeah, tons, right? And with open heart surgery and the recovery and some paralysis that went with that, with my lung, and it was bad. Okay, but you know, people were really gracious to me. But like, if I were going into a service and someone was only giving me only positivity, and I was just feeling trashed, right? It
would kind of make me upset.
It would make you upset on the one hand, or you know what you'd have to do? You'd have to stuff it and become a hypocrite yourself. And this is so unhealthy. And so unhealthy.
And you know, that's another thing too, where, you know, I've been told all the time, you're like, you know, why do you look like you hate the world? Or I'm like, I'm not gonna. Okay, okay, I can see that. Sure, you know, I have to check the camera here a little bit. Like, I gotta smile more. But you know, I mean, me personally,
yeah,
I'm not gonna say hated, but I dislike the people that come to church smiling.
I call them the happy clappy yippee skippies.
It's like,
right?
Are you ever mad?
The plastic fantastics.
Are you ever upset? Are you ever?
Yeah, like get real, right?
Yeah, like get mad at me. I just made fun of you.
Right.
Do something. Punch me in the face.
I know you like to like to rile sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, just you know, just friendly banter. But I mean, like the people that are just always good, they're always positive. It's almost like Like, you know, are you avoiding something?
There's whole movement now. There's a whole movement in certain spiritual circles to have a only happy, joyful life, and that if you're not happy and you're not joyful, then you are not following God and you don't have His full Spirit in you. And I listened to this guy, and he
tell me where they are, and I'll avoid them.
Yeah, well, I was invited to go hear the speaker one time, and the guy gave me some teaching in advance. He said, "Here, bring your whole church." I could not, in good conscience, do it because I was like, this guy is a self-apparent hypocrite, because I know that when something bad happens to him, he is not laughing when inside.
You take a Razor scooter to your shin, bare.
You're not going to laugh.
And guess what? I'll tell you right now, you're not going to be
soul.
The happy camper.
Or to your soul.
Sure.
Right.
You know, it's like, I refuse to be that guy that makes myself in a better mood. You know, if I have my own personal things that I'm going through, am I going to be respectful and positive to you? Yes. Sure. But am I going to be fake? Hey, oh man, today's just the best day. No, it's not.
Right.
It's
and
not.
I think there's something to be said about the greater hope that we have in Jesus, and the truths of the gospel that can help someone come through getting hit in the shin with the razor or the soul,
worst pain.
Right? It really hurts.
That or like a bicycle, like a pedal, just.
So
been there.
Not fun story. When I was 16 years old, playing baseball, they had left a plow out in the field behind a bale of hay, and guy hit the ball, and I was playing center field, and I looped around the bale of hay, and I'm just looking up at the sky, right? I'm going full tilt, and I was one of the fastest runners in my high school, okay? And my shin hit that plow, okay? And I did a backflip. It shattered my tibia. I passed out, and when I woke up, I dug my hands into the soil up to my wrists. It hurt so badly, okay? So I know about shin pain. And when you say it's a unique pain, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a pain that's sort of like, what the heck?
It's just a whole other level of brutality.
Right.
The scooter can just kiss your shin and it can whack it. It's just like it
hurts.
It doesn't matter. Like there's no tough guy on earth.
But we have this response to hypocrisy.
Yeah. And I feel like my response to hypocrisy is just like that. And it's like
absolutely.
It you know that you're being the scooter to my shin, but you don't make the conscious choice to change.
Do they know that?
I don't know. And I wish I knew the answer to that, because if it's apparent to me, I feel like it could be apparent to you too.
Well, all right, so clearly, let's go back to the Pharisees just to take a for instance, okay? Because we can't analyze living people today as well, okay? Mm-hmm. But if you look at some of the Pharisees, there were people like Nicodemus, okay, and Joseph of Arimathea, right? These guys who took a look at what was going on in the world of the Pharisees, and they took a step back and said, we're all caught up in a hypocritical system. I don't like to throw that around a lot, but what ends up happening is, and again, this goes back to what's so damaging and bad about Christianity that is steeped in a culture of hypocrisy, is that you could be born, bred, raised, trained, modeled, and sent to be the best hypocrite in the world.
Have you ever watched any Vice documentaries about the families that are like, KKK members and stuff, and how their kids are just preaching the same thing that their parents are?
They've been indoctrinated. They've been enculturated.
Exactly. So it's like,
right.
Yeah, that's, I have a crazy brain. That's what I think about. But it's like that level of sickness can be passed down easily. And the kids, I see what you're saying there. The kids don't recognize what they're doing,
right,
because they don't know any different.
Well, and there's also certain types of personalities, and I don't want to delve too deeply into this, but like there are certain
that is a big rabbit hole.
There are certain well, no, this is just the surface, right? There are inbox kind of people and there are outbox kind of people. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm not an inbox person. I'm always bucking the system. I'm going to challenge everything. Like if you airdropped me or bred me and raised me with Nicodemus and the Pharisees and the Apostle Paul, I'd been bucking that system the whole time. That's just the way I'm wired, right? Mm-hmm. But there are other people that are performers, okay? And they will, it's not go along to get along. It's figure this out so that I can do my best. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the most positive spin or way to look at it, right? So there could be a whole group, call it the majority, right? That knows, okay, everyone just has to behave this way. Everyone just has to be a hypocrite this way. This is the culture that I live in. If I'm going to survive and thrive in this culture, I got to figure this thing out and perform my best. Mm-hmm. Right? And this is what is so insidiously damaging about hypocrisy, because you got rid of your phone, huh?
It keeps vibrating. It's driving me nuts.
My phone's in my pocket. It's been ringing off the hook.
I didn't want anybody to hear that table.
Ignoring it.
I didn't want that, so I just got rid of it.
Been ignoring it, right? So one of the things that Jesus says, and I didn't know how much of this passage I should read. He says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and of the plate, but inside they're full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and the plate, that the outside may be clean. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and uncleanness. So you also outwardly appear righteous to others, but within you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness." And he goes on. And one of the things that I think he's saying, and Jesus, this is taken from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23, but Jesus says plainly, and this is one that everyone knows, right? Don't try to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye when you have a log in your own eye, a giant board.
You know, one of my favorite Christian jokes is,
what's that?
Whenever somebody makes fun of me at church or something like that, I'm like, "Hey, you got something in your eye?" And they're like, "What?"
They're like
sitting here digging
at it, and you're like, "Yeah."
And they're like, I'm like, "It's still there. It's still there." And they're
it's
like,
huge.
What
it's
is
so
it?
big. We could take that out with a crane.
What are you talking about? I don't see anything. It's a log, dude.
It's a Yeah, so this is hypocrisy, right? Mm-hmm. And Jesus says, first, take the log out of your eye. Or he says, first, you should clean the inside.
Of your eyeball?
No, if you're the cup or the grave or whatever it is, he says, you need to clean the outside, but you don't clean the inside. Mm-hmm. The implication is like, how dumb would it be, like when Yeah, is that like a product placement?
Yeah, sponsor me, Dr. Pepper.
I love Dr.
Sponsor
Pepper.
us.
I really, dude, brief fun time.
My brother is the biggest fan of Dr. Pepper.
I adore Dr. Pepper, but
My girlfriend too.
I cannot do caffeine. So if I want to do Dr. Pepper,
You don't need caffeine.
I need to drink it in the morning.
You, I think, just were born with natural caffeine in your blood,
Dude,
your bloodstream. You don't need
I
caffeine.
stopped drinking coffee. I just drink tea. Just a cup of tea in the morning. That's all I need, man.
I need caffeine. I turn into a chimpanzee, but I need it.
You need it? Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
we can
Anyway.
we can do another segment on caffeine another time. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that Jesus constantly encourages people to be looking at themselves. Is that you?
I'm telling you, man. It's ridiculous.
Station break for Eli's phone. Do you need to take it?
No.
Okay.
My apologies.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so he tells us to clean it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I think that when we see hypocrisy in other people, there's two things that we can do. First, we have to look very deeply at ourselves.
That's
Right?
another reason I don't drink Dr. Pepper. It makes me like burp.
Oh,
Anyway,
yeah.
sorry.
Well, it's soda in general. We have to look at ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. If we spend all day throwing rocks and pointing fingers, then we're going to become very quickly like them, right? So we have to look at ourselves, and this is one of the things that, you know, I have said, and going back to the clearest illustration in my own life, is when I preach.
Yeah.
I have often said that if I'm not reduced to dust before every sermon, it's not going to be any good. And I said to my kids something last week. I said, I'm really nervous about my sermon. My son goes, why? And I go, I like it too much.
Mm-hmm.
And he went, what? And my wife went, oh. And I'm like, yeah, whenever I think my sermon's the stuff, I'm not operating in the Spirit.
Yeah.
I'm borderline on pride and hypocrisy, right? And I'm probably not going to say anything that's helpful to people.
I mean, you can still
because
like what you preach.
You know what?
I know what you're saying, though.
And my
yeah.
son said the same thing, point noted. Like,
Right.
absolutely, man. I should like what I preach, right?
Mm.
But it's like if you're enamored with your own message and you're enamored with your own turns of phrases and you're enamored with your
I know what you're
sticky
saying.
statements.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? It's like, no.
Yeah.
No. You got a dirty
I am so well spoken.
you got
today.
a
I'm
dirty
so-
cup
yeah.
inside,
Yeah,
bro.
Yeah.
And so I have to be reduced to dust every time I preach.
Yeah.
And I've often said to people, and I this is only true in the Holy Spirit. I say, there's a passage in 1 Peter that talks about how your faith, which is of greater worth than gold, which is refined by fire, will be proved genuine and result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus is revealed. So here's the idea. You take a precious metal. We all know this illustration, right? And you put
Yep.
it in the crucible and you put it through the fire.
Yep.
And the filth and the dross and the dirt and the impurities come off.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, if you've been in church long enough, you're going to hear some pastor talk about how, and the person knows that it's pure when they can see their image in the you know, it gets a little sappy, right? That God sees his image when he looks at you. You know, enough of that. The point is that I want to be the kind of person that you can take me, you can stick me in any crucible, you can melt me down and pour me out, and you get exactly what you had before the fire.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be pure gold. I want people to be, this is the goal. This is the goal. In the
It's a hard
power,
goal.
in the power of the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
there would be genuineness. There would be a powerful, palatable authenticity
Mm-hmm.
about my life and about our lives. And I want to breed a culture,
Right.
like a Jesus culture, not a prosperity culture, right? Not a doctrinal culture or a legalistic culture, not a pharisaical culture, but a culture of authenticity.
Mm-hmm. Or a culture where you have to wear skinny jeans to play in a worship band, you know?
No.
I'm just playing.
Isn't that funny though? Could we just do a little excursus on this?
Mhm.
Like, do you ever feel like if you don't wear a certain kind of clothes, you're not cool enough
Oh
for
my
the
gosh.
band?
You know,
Is this
I'm-
touching a sore spot? in
no,
okay.
no. I find it kind of corny, but
Okay.
I came from North Carolina. I was born in Pennsylvania, but I lived in North Carolina majority of my life.
Where in Pennsylvania?
Easton.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I was born
duh,
there.
Right.
Yeah.
We did that whole
Yeah.
"you're a Phillies fan"
Yeah,
thing
we had
when
that whole
first met.
conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
Right. Hey,
so
man, I had open heart surgery.
you didn't have brain surgery. Anyway,
it messed me up. I'm telling you. I just don't. Interesting point. I don't know how these surgeries affect certain people, but I seriously feel like I've lost some brain power. I really do. But anyhow, so you were Easton, Pennsylvania. Yeah, Crayola and Easton baseball.
My mom and dad worked there, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I think. And then you moved.
Did you guys? I don't know.
Okay, you can ask him later.
Yeah.
You moved to North Carolina or South Carolina? When?
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
I was like 4 when we moved down there. It doesn't matter. All of that's irrelevant.
Sure.
What I'm saying is it's only a thing in around here to dress that way in worship bands. Like if you don't have the flannel and if your hair doesn't look like mine.
Dude, I am just really in trouble. I don't use any product in my hair at this time. I need a.
Let me help you. Okay. But
so
it's a culture. It's a culture thing.
Yeah, culture.
It's like. I can dig even deeper. You can look at every freaking contemporary Christian band that exists. They all sound the same. Sure, the singers sound different. You know, the band is different.
Right.
But it's all the same thing.
Well, that's why I kind of like indie music because it's, just like you get a little more variety. It's not trying to fill out a formula so that it's immediately popified.
It's like I've seen kids that wanted to play in the worship band or whatever the case is.
Right.
And they come to tryouts and they are who they are.
Okay.
And when they come to play on Sunday, they look like everybody else. And it's like,
what?
Yeah.
It's like,
and guess what? I was one of those kids
too. Costume. It's like
I was one of those kids.
Like you have to wear this uniform or something.
Dude, when I showed up here from North Carolina, I was wearing my dad's camo shorts.
Okay.
And a black hoodie, and I looked like I did not belong there one bit. And that's okay. I admit that. And I felt in my heart of hearts I didn't belong there. I didn't want to.
Right.
But now I'm literally wearing skinny jeans. It's just like okay, so sure.
My wife has forbidden me to ever wear skinny jeans.
You are not allowed to.
I'm not allowed to, so that solves that problem. My problem is that
sorry, I gotta pull the log out of my
Yeah, right. My problem is that I really need a place to put my phone. So I like to buy these pants that have like a pocket on the side.
The stretchy ones.
No, dude, can't do it.
Don't knock until you try them.
Nope.
I can get in any position possible.
Don't like them.
Doesn't matter.
Nope.
So through all of this, what I'm trying to say is it can be even something so stupid as that.
Right.
Where people don't come to church because they feel they have to be this kind of person. Right. Be this Northwest Indiana lumber guy.
Yeah, but you know what? I know that you
do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do see what you're trying to say, but I actually think that you're making an observation that's more broad and more applicable to anywhere in the world. I am sure that every region has their own iteration
it's a culture
of this,
thing,
right?
But it's like the culture should be to love Jesus. It shouldn't be skinny jeans and flopped over hair.
Well, one of the things,
cool.
you ever heard of a guy named Chuck Smith?
Okay. I'm sure there's a lot of Chuck Smiths.
Okay, Chuck Smith created the Calvary. He started the Calvary movement, and Calvary churches are everywhere. And basically, Chuck Smith was a pastor in California, and no one was reaching the hippie surf culture. And he basically opened up the doors and said he stopped. He basically said, "What is it? What do I need to do so that I can speak to these people with a measure of authenticity, and they won't think that I'm kind of stuffed shirt hypocrite?" And he started wearing shorts and sandals. He started sitting, I think, when he taught. Like, he did all kinds of things that were like, whoa, and just started having Bible studies and bringing these people in. And I'm telling you,
sounds like a cool place to be.
He is that guy. What a legacy of authenticity in the Holy Spirit.
And what I think I'm talking about is that fine line where if your culture deters people from wanting to be a part of it,
right,
you're now doing exactly the opposite of what you preach.
Yep.
And it's like, and it doesn't have to be what you wear. It doesn't need to be skinny jeans. It could be anything. I used to be a delivery guy.
Okay.
I mean, I used to do janitorial products and stuff like that during COVID and everything. That's what I did. It was a fun job. What was it? But, you know, I would deliver to churches all the time. And, you know, I delivered toilet paper and all these other things.
Sure.
And I also delivered to liquor stores, all the paper bags and stuff that are Northwest
Right.
Indiana.
Yeah.
That was your boy
right.
for 2 years. That was me.
Okay.
You're welcome. But as funny as it is, I'd see these pastors at the liquor stores. I'm like, hey, I just saw you like 2 hours ago. Oh, yeah.
You're getting the communion wine or something. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. But
Maybe
like,
Jesus turned water into wine.
you know, we're not going to get into the whole, you know, you can have a couple beers, you just can't get drunk. I hate
Sure.
this. What is wrong with this?
Maybe you're needed. Is it time to land the plane?
No, I have this stupid monitor thing, and it like has an alarm that goes
Oh,
off. Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
I apologize.
It's your
But
blood-
anyway,
it's your blood sugar monitor.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But where was I at? It's like I don't want to get into that whole thing where like
It's
you
a
can have
little-
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody knows
understand.
about it. It's the most common conversation in all of Christianity. But I feel like it's just a justification to drink some beer. It's
Sure.
cool. Have a beer, man. I don't care.
Right.
For me, it's like I see that kind of stuff. And like these people go to this church, and then that same pastor is telling these people you shouldn't drink.
See that right there. If you're a pastor that preaches that you shouldn't drink and you're off drinking, or your pastor,
I mean,
whatever.
I mean, and
whatever
like,
it is, gambling, pornography,
and I'm not just
immorality,
making
anything.
and I'm not just making this stuff up. I mean, like I literally would deliver, you know, to, you know, Catholic churches or anything
Sure.
during the week while they're in the middle of this and that.
Right.
And it's like the same dudes that I'd see somewhere else, and it's like,
Hey.
and I don't know if God just like allowed me to see these things in order for me to learn something, but it's like,
Definitely.
you know,
I think
I'm almost thankful for it. I'm almost thankful. I'm not thankful for hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thankful that I'm able to recognize what it is, because I think God taught me that, and I think He's put me in situations to pull me out of it, if that makes sense.
Well, I think
It's like your dad throwing you in the deep end to teach you how to swim. The message, what he wants to do for you, is good,
sure.
but it sucks at that time, and it's like, do I want to see the same pastor at a liquor store that like that made me feel sick? It's
Right.
like, you know,
Right.
like what are you teaching people?
Right.
Or whatever the case is. It's just like,
Well, I think one of the things that, really we need to go back to is that Jesus really encourages us
yeah,
to have a life of authenticity. He basically says you need to have your inside be what your outside is, and your outside what your inside is. And if you don't have that, it needs to get clean.
authenticity is not something that is common nowadays, unfortunately.
Well, it's something that we really need to strive for. In fact, I think so many people find it so incredibly attractive because everything is so fake. I mean, we need to land the plane. I don't know how long we've been going on. I don't have a marker here, but
They'll listen.
we probably should get one, don't you think? Really, there's so many levels, so many layers to this hypocrisy, and there's so many things that we want to avoid. But like social media, Facebook rebranded as this company Meta, and and now they're talking about having a virtual world where you can look and be whoever you craft yourself to be. And people are excited about this. They're seeing all kinds of new possibilities with this. And, I just finally said to my kid, my kids, we had this big conversation around the dinner table, and I was like, yeah, I just want to know a couple things. Like, how do you eat in the virtual world? I'm like, here's another one, and don't take this the wrong way. It's meant in a very scientific way. How do you use the restroom? I'm like, because there are real physical needs that you have, right? And that cannot be satisfied in a virtual world. And we are literally training people layer after layer after layer to be somebody that they're not, to hide and wear a mask. And then when someone has an encounter with a religious community or a spiritual community and they don't see authenticity, they're like, yo, more of the same. I don't need that.
Right.
We want authenticity. It's something that we need to demand of ourselves and others. Not in a demand. I don't want to be harsh, but like for me, look, man, I just know I don't ever want to be that guy, and I know that Jesus' harshest words, his most powerful criticism is that hypocrisy has no place in a relationship with God and into God's kingdom.
I agree. I mean, meta would be cool if I could be like Ryan Reynolds or Brad Pitt. If I could look like those two dudes.
I think you can.
Probably.
You probably can. Right?
I think I'm pretty close.
I'll take Ryan Reynolds.
Right.
Yeah. Well, look, I think that's a good place for us to put a bookmark in it.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate you stopping by the Bridgepoint channel and podcast. I'm Pastor Matthew Peters, and
I'm not a pastor. My name is Eli.
And till next time, hey, if you like this, please hit the like button, subscribe, share it with your friends. We're going to be trying to have content come to you again and again, and feel free to subscribe and share. Thanks so much. See you guys soon.